Also, I got new glasses. You like them? If you are in your 20s and questioning your life, having a little bit of a quarter life crisis, advancements, but hello, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for clicking on this video. That means you are probably in the market for some new book recommendations. When I was in elementary school, some of my favorite book series were Junie B. Jones, Magic Treehouse, Nancy Drew, The Boxcar Children. In middle school, I was absolutely a huge Harry Potter fan and a Twilight nerd as well. Two of our friends had a joint birthday party and it was Twilight themed. I have written many blog posts on my blog about my love for reading. And as soon as I started taking classes in high school and having to do a lot more assigned readings, it just became harder and harder to pick up reading for fun. Lately, I've made some efforts to kind of pick reading back up. I also recently got a Kindle, which I think really helped me be able to get back into the flow and build the habit again. So I wanted to run through 10 of my top book recommendations of the moment. My favorite book of all time, it is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's by Betty Smith. I have reread this book probably at least 10 to 15 times in my life. It is about a family that lives in Brooklyn around the turn of the 20th century, and they're very poor. It's a mother and a father. The mother is a house cleaner. The father is an alcoholic and he works odd jobs and waiter gigs, but it's nothing stable. And the main character is their daughter, whose name is Francie, and when it starts off, I think she's 11 years old. Right off the bat, I instantly connected with her. She loves reading, she loves writing, she has a very curious view of the world, she questions a lot of things, she's super observant, the way that she sees regular people on the streets, how she sees groceries and meals, them having to save up money in a physical piggy bank in their closet. It's not even just about Francie, it's about all of the people in her family as well as her family's backstory. So it goes and dives really deeply into the mother's story, the father's story, their parents, Francie's grandparents. This book isn't even about like a particular character or even this family. It's about life itself. If you like coming of age novels, there's a ton of relatable and remarkable content in this book, and I would highly, highly recommend it. Oh, Magic Hour. When a child first knows she can read printed words. My second recommendation is called The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. And this book was recommended to me by my friend Eileen a couple of years ago. It follows 4 siblings who, when they're all pretty young, they go and secretly meet up with a fortune teller who apparently this fortune teller can tell them the day that each of them is going to die. So the 4 children go, they're each told their fortune. Some people are happy, others are less happy, and it follows each of the children from their perspective in the order of who dies the soonest. If you were told, hey, you're gonna die in 30 years on this day, how would you live your life? How does that change your perspective on the world? And that's pretty much what this book illustrates. Because it's 4 different children, each of them kind of has different reaction to being told this very just crazy news. This book was so good that I ripped through it in just a couple of days. As each sibling's life wraps up, you're just so curious about the next one and how their death impacts their siblings, and especially as they all grow up and become adults, sometimes talk about this fortune that they got told when they were all kids. It's just so interesting. It just makes you kind of think about the concept of a predetermined fate versus choosing your own destiny and trying to forge your own path. So if you like supernatural books, I would highly recommend this book. The next recommendation is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and this book is kind of similar to A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's also multi-generational. It's about a family's rise from poverty to building up wealth. This one is about a Korean family that initially starts off in Korea and then also in Japan during the Second World War, and all the way up into the late 1980s. So it's 4 generations of the same family, and there's so many important and thoughtful themes throughout this book. One thing that I wanted to touch on is the first sentence of the book, which is, "History has failed us, but no matter." I actually found a news article where the author talks about this first sentence and what she meant by it. The memory of history has been reconstructed by the elite because the overwhelming majority of ordinary people rarely leave sufficient primary documents. They do not have others recording their lives in real time. This just makes me think of the so many stories that are just glossed over, not told, not repeated, not passed down from generation to generation, but these stories are equally important. Being aware of these different experiences just puts history into more perspective. After that initial quote, she says, "The phrase, 'but no matter,' is a statement of defiance. It doesn't matter that history has failed us because ordinary people have persisted anyway. This idea gives me an enormous amount of strength and hope as a writer because I am an ordinary person. Those of us who may be women of color, immigrants, or working class aren't often meant to be people who write novels about ideas, but no matter." There's so many important themes throughout this book: war, poverty, power dynamics, hope, and all kind of evolving over 4 generations. I really did not know too much about the Korean experience during World War II and around that period of time, and being able to read this book really illuminated that whole area of history that just is so untouched and so uncovered. The next book is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. And it's the same author who wrote Gone Girl. So if you've read that book or seen the movie, you kind of have a sense of what's going on, but it's about a murder or multiple murders. They kind of refer to it as a massacre in the book. It's about this girl named Libby Day who, when she was 7 years old, her mother and her sisters were murdered in her house while she was there. Her brother ended up going to jail for the crime. And then it flashes forward to Libby when she's 30 years old, growing up with this terrible tragedy that's happened to her family. Beyond this mystery itself, there's obsessive people in her community that are really interested in her story and getting to the bottom of what happened that day. And she gets involved with this group who has some more evidence and gets her thinking of like, maybe it wasn't my brother and maybe he's not guilty, but she's kind of solidified that in her brain all of these years. So she has a little bit of trouble coming to terms with the fact that maybe it was someone else that did this to her family and that person is out there. She starts to go down this path of looking into what really happened, trying to resurface some memories that are repressed. In the way that the book is structured, there are flashbacks to the day of the murders, the days leading up to the murders, giving a little bit more context about the brother, the family situation, what was going on in their lives at the time. Oh my gosh, when you get to the ending, you will also be blown away. The ending is so good. Okay, so onto some nonfiction recommendations. The first one is food writing. And I have 2 of the editions of the book here. One's from 2015, the other one's from 2017. And I actually don't think that they continued this series, but essentially what it is a compilation of some really great food writing pieces. They pulled some of the best articles and essays that they could find from magazines, from books, from other sources online. I loved flipping through these and just kind of settling on a random chapter, a title that caught my eye, and just diving deep into something that's so particular that you might not know too much about, something like Nashville hot chicken, or is Guy Fieri actually like what he looks like on TV? Does he, act that way? I would recommend this book if you either like really good, great writing styles, as well as if you really like food. The next book recommendation that I have is called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. He's a historian and a professor at Hebrew University of Jerusalem in the Department of History. There's actually a little bit of, not controversy, but criticism of this book, how it's laid out, how his arguments are structured, if it glosses over certain things or kind of jumps to conclusions really easily. And I guess my caveat on this book is that I don't know very much about at least the start of humanity, how humans grow in population, form communities, build cities. This book really opened my eyes and kind of got me thinking about, you know, who are we really? I'm just a 25-year-old living in the year 2021. For me, like, the first couple chapters were the most interesting. If you are interested in getting a little bit more insight into what humans are, how we came to be, how we've gotten to this point, I recommend the first couple chapters of this book. For the tidbit that I've shared with my friends after finishing this book was how we started off as hunter-gatherers, not having stable places to live, just kind of roaming about and migrating the continents that we were on. And then at a certain point, something happened that it made sense for humans to start settling down, having farms, growing corn. Can you imagine how if humans were used to eating berries and nuts and meat, and then over the course of a period of time they start farming, and now they have cornfields and potatoes and wheat, and then because of them settling down and having large amounts of harvests every year, that starts to dominate their diet, what that does to someone's health, what that does to their immune systems, all these questions that, you know, you never really think to think about. I'm just a person on the earth at this period of time. Fortunate that we have all these technological advancements, but onto some self-help books. The Power of Habit. It is by Charles Duhigg. It breaks down, the power of habit. It's structured in 3 different chapters in the book. The first, which I found to be the most relevant, is how individuals form habits. It has a ton of anecdotes, references scientific studies, and specific case studies of people who had some form of a bad habit or maybe like a very interesting neurological condition, and how their actions could be explained by the habits that they built up over time. So, you know, classic stories that you might imagine: a woman who's addicted to cigarettes, someone who's addicted to gambling, because all of these people had inadvertently or maybe on purpose built up specific habits over their lifetime. These cues and these processes that they've built in their brains, they're so firm and so fixed. It breaks down the different components of habit formation in terms of a cue, a reward, a signal. If you're feeling like you're in a rut, or if you know that you have some bad habits and want to understand why they were formed and what you could possibly do about it, it'll give you a better understanding of, how did I get here? You know, what are some tangible steps that I could take to maybe break this bad habit? My next recommendation is Digital Minimalism by Newport. This book was very enlightening. If you watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix and wanted to know more, I would check this book out. It talks about a digital minimalist, which they're the person that you're eating lunch with them, they don't check their phone. They can focus on a conversation. They don't get sucked into meaningless apps or, you know, infinite scrolling on their feeds, and they have a much better control on technology and how it influences their lives. So his stance on technology is not necessarily that we should completely get rid of it. He offers some really tangible advice on how to reset your relationship with technology, realizing that a lot of our interactions with each other are not as deep as we'd like them to be. They're very surface level, they're very visually based, and it talks about, are you really making the most of all the apps that are on your phone? What's a better way for you to organize your time so that you can have better conversations with close friends, meaningful conversation? He basically advocates for a 30-day reset where you stop using anything that isn't absolutely necessary, to the point where you slowly start to reintroduce things, but make sure that each reintroduction has a specific intention behind it. No matter who you are, you can benefit from this book, and each person will probably take a little bit something different away. Here are a couple quotes. Simply put, humans are not wired to be constantly wired. This one's key. Okay. By removing your ability to access social media at any moment, You reduce its ability to become a crutch deployed to distract you from bigger voids in your life. You preserve your ability to use specific features that you identify as important to your life, but on your own terms. Some food for thought right there. The next book that I recommend is The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. If you are in your 20s and questioning your life, having a little bit of a quarter life crisis, its main goal is to kind of dispel the myth of 30 is the new 20. She also references a lot of research, experiments, some of her own clients, and she is a psychologist who specializes in adult development. Her whole point is that you don't necessarily need to solidify everything in your life in your 20s, but by pushing it off, by delaying, responsibilities, you're doing your future self a disservice. This book discusses multiple different angles of people who are in their 20s. Relationships, financial status, career growth, health. It also discusses the changes that a person goes to if they perhaps are in college and then they graduate and start working in the workforce, which was super relevant to me. I definitely struggled with that transition from taking classes, being around a large group of friends, people your age, to working a 9-to-5. So many life changes, and this book really put into perspective, here's some of the key things that you should be thinking about. Here's how it's affected other people. Here's some stories of folks that were really struggling and what they did to kind of pick their lives up and start marching in the right direction. If you're in your early 20s or about to turn 20, I would really recommend this book. You should check it out. Here are some quotes. Our 20s are the defining decade of adulthood. 80% of life's most defining moments take place by about age 35. 2/3 of lifetime wage growth happens during the first 10 years of a career. More than half of Americans are married or are dating or living with their future partner by age 30. Personality can change more during our 20s than at any other decade in life. Female fertility peaks at 28. The brain caps off its major last growth spurt. When it comes to adult development, 30 is not the new 20. Even if you do nothing, not making choices is a choice all the same. Don't be defined by what you didn't know or didn't do. The very last book is a book that is near and dear to my heart. It is Show Your Work by Kleon. And funny story is that I actually bought this book from Urban Outfitters when I was in high school. It was just one of those, cute, colorful books that they have in the book section. And I think right around that time or shortly before, I had started my blog and, wasn't totally sure on how I felt or what I should be writing about. And this book really helped put things into perspective and make me feel more confident and comfortable with putting content out there. And if you've heard of Ali Abdaal, who's on YouTube as well, he also talked about how this book really changed his life. And when I watched that video, I was like, same man, same. Because I wrote about this on my blog when I was, I think it was 2014. And this book basically talks about how you don't need to be an expert in whatever it is that you're creating content on or working on. People love to learn more about people that are going through the process or also learning with them. So if you have anything to share, if you want to document your experiences, mistakes you made, lessons learned, there will inevitably be people out there on the internet who will benefit and, want to read that type of content. Consistency is really key here. A lot of people think, well, what do I have to share? No one is going to be interested in what I have to say. This book breaks down why you should try to think on the other side of that coin in terms of, what if someone is interested? What if what you share online can positively impact people? Is it then worth sharing? You should try to think that way when you're questioning yourself and, doubting your abilities. This book was the foundation that I built my blog on. I have also written posts about I don't mind being an amateur. I want to share my thoughts, especially in the 2014 WordPress community. There was also some great people that I got to just chat with online that had similar interests and also encouraged me to keep writing and keep growing. So a couple of quick quotes that I wanted to read. Share what you love, and the people who love the same things will find you. I love that. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any recommendations for me, I would really appreciate it if you could add them to a comment below. Also, I got new glasses. You like them? Have a good rest of your day.